Welcome back, pet parent. We're doing something a little bit different today. And I have been trying to, in the past few months, every once in a while, kind of dip our toes a little bit into how things overlap between what we're doing for our pets and what we're doing with ourselves. And I'm really going to get into that with our guest today. I just think it is so incredibly important that wherever you are on your journey, I say this all the time, I feel like most people either start with something happens to them and they go down the rabbit hole of figuring out how to be healthy for themselves, possibly their family. And then they look at their pets and are like, oh my gosh, I should be doing the same thing for my dog or my cat. Or something happens to one of your pets and you go down the rabbit hole. And then one day you wake up and you're like, why am I doing all of this for my pet and I'm not doing it for myself? So I think that overlap is significant and I want to highlight that more. And the reality is that we live in a very, very toxic world. From the food we eat, if you are not actively plugging your ears and closing your eyes today, you are seeing somewhere about how corrupt our food system is, how corrupt our medical system, pharmaceutical system is. And one of the things that can be a little bit more on the sciencey side is that we are inundated with omega-6s. These are when we have this like imbalance of omega-6s to omega-3s, and I will throw some omega-9s in there somewhere, or at least our guest today will. It is a very inflammatory thing that happens in our body, and we are just in, whether it's the ultra-processed foods or the chemicals in our water, and we have to be, it's just one of the many things that we have to be really aware of. And it's also why omega-3 supplementation is something that we do talk about often when we talk about feeding our pets. So Judah Vitale is here with Nordic Naturals today, and I am really, really excited for you to be here, Judah. Can you please, I was kind of joking, but not joking before we hit record that your bio is very academic for me. So can you tell people a little bit about who you are and your history?
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. Well, I think first and foremost, I'm a lover of the life sciences, and that's really what I've dedicated my life to, is understanding what it means to be human. And the avenue that I pursued that from was the realm of the human physiology. And so for the last 30 years, I've been immersed in studying the physiology, the interconnectedness of the physiology, and how to use diet, lifestyle, nutritional supplements, medicinal plants to bring balance and health and allow for the human being to thrive. Some of what I've done in the past is I have been the program director for a functional medicine clinic where we ran people through 3 and 6 month elimination diet programs. This was for people who were sick and tired of being sick and tired, and they've tried everything and they've been exhausted at trying to get health. And, we help them achieve that. I was also the program director for a direct primary care naturopathic clinic where I was affectionately called the Care Sherpa. And because I did a lot of the heavy lifting, I saw all of our patients and I helped people along their healing journey in many ways. And I've also had a long-standing background in the nutritional supplement industry. I've been the director of education for a major nutraceutical company. And currently I am the clinical nutrition education specialist for a company called Nordic Naturals, where we are a omega fatty acid and foundational nutrient company. And so what I do is I work in our professional division and I go out and I train healthcare practitioners. And what I love what you said in the beginning, that sometimes in the realm of pet health, it translates over in the human health, and omega-3s is one of the areas that happens. And so not only do I train human practitioners, but I also train veterinarians and to use omega-3s for their pet patients.
So I think we should just jump right in. And can you explain a little bit to me and our listeners about the role of omega-3, omega-6, omega-9 fatty acids? That's something that I don't hear a whole lot about omega-9s, but I know all of this plays they work synergistically, and that's all I know. Can you tell me
Sure.
more?
I love it. So we're going to keep omega-3s and omega-6s in one realm, and we're going to put omega-9s in another. So omega-6s and omega-3s are what we call essential fatty acids. And the reason why they're called essential is because we cannot manufacture them in the physiology. We have to get them. It's actually essential that we get them from our diet, from outside sources. So that's why they're called essential fatty acids. And then omega-9, the most popular form being oleic acid, we can actually manufacture that. But the most popular source that we get that from is olive oil. Olive oil is very rich in omega-9. So is avocado oil as well as walnut. So those would be popular sources of omega-9. Now, omega-6s and omega-3s do different things in the physiology. They kind of have, they're like an on-off switch together, okay? So when we look at the human physiology, when we're exposed to something that triggers the immune system, or we do high-intensity exercise, something that induces inflammation, an inflammatory response, omega-3s are kind of like are the fat that helps that to happen. And inflammation is a very normal process. We have to have an inflammatory response as part of an immunological response. That's healthy and normal. But we also have to have an off switch to that inflammatory response. And that's where omega-3s come in. Omega-3s provide the counterbalance to omega-6. So when we consume omega-6 and we consume omega-3, they go in to the digestive system, we absorb them, and then they will get into our cell membranes. And that's where they live. They live inside the cell membrane, and the cell membrane is this double layer of fat that encapsulates the cell. And it serves three main purposes. It helps with the import of nutrients into the cell, the export of wastes out of the cell, and cell-to-cell communication. So the membrane of the cell is really important. And that's where fatty acids live, is inside the cell membrane. And they determine its fluidity and flexibility and a variety of other factors. And so when you get omega-6s into the cell membrane, what will happen is if there's a need for an inflammatory response, those omega-6s, primarily something called arachidonic acid, will be converted into these lipid mediators, these fatty mediators that will stimulate the expression of inflammation, you could say. And omega-3s, when they're in the cell membrane at adequate amounts, those will get used and converted into other types of lipid mediators we can call pro-resolving mediators that help with the resolution of inflammation and can stimulate tissue regeneration, can stimulate the healing response. So that's the push-pull relationship between omega-6 and omega-3.
So it's very crucial that we do balance out the omega-6s with the omega-3s. Do we want more? Or is it like are we looking for a 1-to-1? Are we looking for a 2-to-1? What are we looking for?
Right. So, and that's a great question. And it's really tissue specific. But what we can say in general is that in the human physiology, it's generally about a 3-to-1 relationship of omega-6 to omega-3. In our pets, it's usually about a 4 or 5-to-1 relationship of omega-6 to omega-3. Now, sometimes it's 1-to-1, depending on the tissue. But in general, anywhere from 3-to-1 for humans to 5-to-1 for pets.
That brings up so many questions, but I'm gonna save some of my crazier questions for the end. So, what are, in your opinion, or lots of research opinion, what are the best natural sources of omega-3s for both people and pets? Do you find them to be the same or different?
Right. So now omega-3, there's two different categories to omega-3s. At the top, so if you can picture like a chain, at the top of the chain, you could say the parent omega-3 is alpha-linolenic acid. And that comes from plant material like flax seeds, chia seeds, dark leafy green vegetables, or dark leafy green plants. And so that theoretically, through a series of enzymatic reactions, can convert into EPA and DHA, which we consider necessary omega-3s. So alpha-linolenic acid is the one that's really considered essential. And then you have EPA and DHA, which are necessary. Now that conversion process is very limited, 1 to 10%. The conversion rate doesn't really work out as far as getting EPA and DHA from plant sources. The only way to get EPA and DHA is from cold water fatty fish or algae sources, so marine sources. And EPA and DHA have a more powerful effect in the cell than alpha-linolenic acid does. So there are more powerful fatty acids. They're more powerful fatty acids, and they do different things as well. So what we really want when we're looking at omega-3s is you definitely want some alpha-linolenic acid, but what you really want to focus on, because it's harder to get, is the EPA and DHA. And that can only come from, as I said, cold water fatty fish, cod, mackerel, herring, anchovies, sardines. Those are all popular sources. And then you can also, for any vegetarians out there or vegetarian pet friends, there is algae sourced EPA and DHA as well.
Okay, so that actually brings up a listener question that I had. Her question was on the bioavailability of microalgae oils for cats specifically, because she has a new kitten who is averse to fish.
How unique.
Very, very.
I'm a cat guy, by the way. I'm just going to be really forward. I am a cat person, so I love the cats.
I get it. I have always, since the day I turned 18 and moved out, I've always had at least one cat.
I love it. That's great. So she's wondering if I'm hearing this correctly, she's wondering if the bioavailability of EPA and DHA from an algae source is similar to that from a fish source.
That's what it sounds like to me.
Yep. Yes, it is, because EPA is EPA and DHA is DHA, whether it comes from an algae source or from a fish source. So the key thing is making sure that perhaps that when they give the cat the algae oil, to make sure it's with food, and that will fully enhance the digestion and absorption of that oil.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that there could be some benefit in, say, a flaxseed oil, but you're just not going to get what you think you're getting out of it, unless you're getting some sort of marine source.
So yeah, I would. What I would say is not that you're not getting what you think you're getting out of it, but that would be the case if you're taking flaxseed oil and trying to get EPA and DHA.
Got it.
Got it. But if there's plenty of reasons to take flaxseed oil on its own. So alpha-linolenic acid has benefits on its own. It just doesn't efficiently convert to EPA and DHA, which do radically different things than alpha-linolenic acid. And so in order to have these pro-resolving mediators, these fluidity and flexibility of the cell membrane, you have to have EPA and DHA. So then you really have to get that from a direct source.
Okay. And I think in the pet space, the way we think of supplementing omega-3s does have a lot to do with EPA and DHA and reducing the inflammation in the body. Like that's, I think, the primary reason people go to supplement omega-3s is for inflammation reduction. And I don't know where I was going with that, but that is like anybody that is consulting with a dog or a cat and they're like, oh, we need to reduce inflammation, we need omega-3s, like that's what they're
Yep, that is the most
getting that.
common use of omega-3s. Yeah,
Gotcha.
absolutely. Yep.
So, one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, because there is, well, humans, that's the reason for everything. Humans destroy things, and we destroy the earth and the waterways, and there are microplastics in everything, in our brains, in all of our organs, in the fish in the ocean. Like, we are so destructive. But also, we overfish a lot. So, there are lots of different concerns with overfishing, with the potential contaminants that would be in an omega supplement. Can you talk to any of that?
Sure, yeah. I think it's important for your listeners to know what to look for if they're going to purchase an omega-3 fish oil supplement. I think that's really important to be a informed consumer. And yeah, when you're working with fish oil, you're working with a very slowly renewable resource. And it's important to take care of that resource. And so I think, first and foremost, what you really want to look for is a company that only uses non-endangered fish. And not only that, but also works with fishing fleets that are certified sustainable, whether that be from Friends of the Sea. That's one of the most popular ones. There's a few others out there as well, but looking for a company that is certified sustainable with their fish oil. And so those two things are really important, because if you do that, then what that ensures is that overfishing isn't happening, that trawling or scraping the ocean floor isn't happening, that there's bycatch control methods in place, so you're not getting dolphins or sharks or turtles and things you don't want to be getting. And so those are some of the, starting at the top there, that, as far as sourcing is concerned. And then to take on the issue of contamination, whether it be with heavy metals or PCB, you want to make sure that that company is third-party tested and that their purity meets international standards, which there are. There are international standards for PCBs and for heavy metals, whether it be cadmium, lead, mercury, things like that. A very common technique that is used for purifying fish oil is molecular distillation. And that helps clean out, get rid of all those contaminants. And so a company should really fall below the international standards for those, in all honesty. And then the third thing you're really looking for when it comes to fish oil is oxidation levels, because omega-3s being omega-3 are essential fatty acids, and essential fatty acids are technically what we call polyunsaturated fatty acids. And this makes them very delicate, and they can oxidize and go rancid very easily. And oxidation of fats and rancidity of fats is not a good thing. Do not want to be consuming that. And traditionally with fish oil, if a product has a really gnarly fishy smell to it, then that product is probably rancid. It's probably highly oxidized. And so you want to make sure that that company has low oxidation levels of their fish oil as well. And because that will ensure that that is a fresh product. And and probably won't give the fish burps.
Well, yeah, and I think certainly see it in both human and pet products, but I do think more people that are using it for themselves, maybe a little bit more aware of it than pet parents, because I do see, like, it is rampant that I see fish oils in plastic containers.
Right.
fish oils that are, gallon size. And I'm like, there is no, especially somebody who has like a small dog, there's no
Oh yeah.
way you're going to go through that before it goes like, yeah. What are some of the best practices
Yeah.
to look for in
So
packaging?
exactly. So, I'm glad you brought up the plastic because plastic allows oxygen to leach in to the product, and that you definitely don't want. The large containers with the pumps on them, you don't want that either because the pump sucks air back in and can lead to oxidation as well. You don't need a gallon container unless you're giving it to, a horse or you have like,
A fleet of
a
animals?
pack of dogs. So, um, for the little guys like the chihuahuas and stuff like that, a 2 ounce bottle is all you need to get them through for a long time. So, you know, it should be in glass first and foremost. It should not have a pump. Don't want a pump. Um, and if it's the oil itself that's in a container, you want to refrigerate it as well. Keep it in the refrigerator, and that will slow any kind of oxidation from happening. And what I always recommend is just shaking it before using it, just to mix it all up. And then that way, because what's on the top that's going to be more exposed to air is going to have a little more oxidation over time than what's on the bottom, right? So you just want to kind of shake it up and have it mixed well. And so that's another thing to take into consideration.
Do you have a preference of like the color of glass?
Dark
Can sunlight
amber, a dark amber. It shouldn't be in a clear glass bottle
Okay.
because light will affect it as well.
Okay. And gel tabs might be a good idea too.
Gel capsules are great. Like if you don't like using a liquid, or if your pet doesn't like a liquid, because that does happen. There are pets out there that just won't do the liquid. So soft gels are fantastic also. That's a great way to go. Put it in a little treat, give it to them, and then the difference between using the liquid versus the gel caps is the gel caps don't really need to be refrigerated. They don't have to be like the liquid does. So that would be one of the biggest differences right there.
That makes sense. So you were talking a little bit about third-party testing for purity. Are we looking for testing for what is in it and what is not in it? Or how do you go about like vetting a company? What does Nordic Naturals do?
Right. So usually you're testing for potency. So the potency of the EPA and DHA, how much is actually in it. You're looking at the purities. So you're looking at the parts per million, parts per billion, parts per trillion of PCBs, heavy metals. So you're kind of getting a read of how much of that is actually in there. And then oxidation. And that's anisodine and Totox. And so then you're looking at oxidation levels. Those are the key things. We test for a wide variety of things, but those, as far as international standards are concerned, are what we're looking at. And anybody who has a bottle of our product, that bottle will have a lot number on it. And that lot number, you can go to the Nordic Naturals website and you can plug in the lot number on a little drop down tab called the Nordic Promise. And that will bring up what's called the certificate of analysis for that batch of oil. So that's full transparency. That's one of the things that we're really into. And so you can see the potency, the purity, and the oxidation of that batch of oil that is in your hand.
That's pretty cool. I appreciate that very much because I think that's probably not industry standard. Like you're going above and beyond
Yeah,
to post
totally
that.
not industry standard. Very much not industry standard. Would love to see it be, but it's not.
Yeah. I very much appreciate companies that do go above and beyond and kind of push for better transparency, better consumer practices like that in whatever industry they're in. Uh, because I think more and more people are realizing that the trust that we have had in companies and corporations in food and healthcare for so long, like, has become misplaced, unfortunately. There's, so having companies that are like, yeah, I get it. And here we go. Here it is for you to see because we want you to be able to trust our product and know that, your all the research you have done was not in vain. You
Right.
found something good, right?
Exactly. I mean, I think if there's any one thing we could use more of from corporations, that's honesty and transparency. And so it's nice that there are companies out there that are willing to be that.
Absolutely. And I have seen that more, and obviously Nordic they do both human and pet supplements, but I have seen that in the pet space, especially like that, what I like to call the healthy pet space, so much more than in other industries it's been really, really nice to get to know and work with people who are like really on that bandwagon of transparency and putting good products out for the sake of putting good products out, like, even though it may not be the cheapest product out there, like, you
Well,
believe it's the best.
and there's that, age old saying, you get what you pay for, right? And most consumers are value shoppers, meaning that if they understand why something costs more, they'll be willing to pay for that. That
Mhm.
perceived value is really important. And so, I know that I want nothing but the best, especially if I'm dealing with something that is as delicate as an omega-3, as a fish oil. I want high quality, top quality, so that my body, my child's body, my partner's body, our pets are all getting what they really need.
Well, and that kind of brings me back around to what you were talking about earlier with the proper storage. I have seen, well, I say seen, but probably smelled so many times off the shelf. You buy a fish oil product and it's already rancid.
Uh-huh.
It has that smell you were talking about. And um and you said, once it becomes rancid, we don't want to give that. Why? Can you tell me why that is?
Well, yeah, I mean, it just consuming rancid fats disrupts the gut microbiome. It can create the opposite effects of what you're taking it for. Really, if I was just I could get into all the heady science, but let's keep it really understandable, and that is, it can just cause the opposite of why you're taking it. So,
Yeah.
you're not going to be getting the results that you're wanting. In fact, you'll be encouraging the damage that's already happening.
So, in general, what obviously we're looking for that fishy smell, but if somebody does have a product, they've done all their research, say they've purchased a Nordic Naturals product and it's in the glass container, they didn't purchase a huge gallon of it, and they are putting it in the refrigerator. What is there a certain amount of time where you're like, okay, it's probably been in here too long. We don't want to continue giving this. Are there other things to be looking for rancidity?
I think, the time frame that I have is 2 to 3 months. Use it within 2 to 3 months. That seems to be the safest bet right there. Is if you can consume it within 3 months' time, fantastic. You really don't have much to worry about at all. But if you put it in the fridge and forget about it, and 6 months later, a year later, you're like, oh, look what I found. I forgot I had this. Better off putting that one in the trash and starting all over.
Yes, because as you just said, you may well get the opposite effect,
Yeah,
which is not good.
exactly. No, it really isn't.
So I'd like to get a little more maybe practical with you if you don't mind. And let's start with humans. It could be women, it could be men, but I know there are I think they're probably, and you could probably tell me this a lot better. This is just a theory I have. Even though men and women, I'm sure, could benefit from omega-3 supplementation, I actually wonder if there's more benefit for women because of the important role of fats with hormones, and that our hormone cycle is 28 days versus your 24-hour hormone cycle. What does that make any sense?
Well, yeah, it does. And fatty acids help with the production of hormones. And so, um, y- you know, so yes, there is, do men need them equally as much? Yeah, we do. Men don't get out of this one. We need, unless we tend to look for any way possible to get out of taking care of ourselves.
For sure.
We don't get a free pass on this. We need them also, but women do need them in a more comprehensive way than we do, actually. So it helps with hormonal signaling. So coming back to the cell membrane is where all the receptors are on the cells, and that's how cells send and receive signals. And fatty acids help with improving or enhancing or supporting cell signaling, whether that be one cell signaling to another or a cell receiving a signal and internalizing it, and then making adjustments accordingly, right? So going into the DNA, having the DNA stimulate a particular response to that information, which is what a signal is. It's like we're having a conversation, and the more that we understand each other and have clear communication, I can receive what you're saying and think about it and have a proper response rather than, say, a inflammatory response or some negative knee-jerk reaction response, right? And so this is what fatty acids help do by having adequate amounts of EPA, DHA, GLA, which is an anomaly in the omega-6 realm. It does the opposite. It acts more like an omega-3 than it does an omega-6. Right? And GLA comes from things like evening primrose oil and borage seed oil and blackcurrant seed oil. And so we really don't get it from food sources. You really have to supplement for that one. And so GLA is this omega-6 anomaly that helps with, the healthy regulation of hormones. And so I would say, women do have a greater, I don't know if physiological need would really be the way to say it, but given that you're working with a more dynamic hormonal system than we are, it's really important to have a balance of omega-3, omega-6, omega-9, and not just the omega-6s like linoleic acid. So we talked about omega-3 having the parent omega-3 being alpha-linolenic acid. Well, the parent omega-6 is linoleic acid. And linoleic acid will go through this conversion chain to GLA, gamma-linolenic acid, to DGLA, and eventually to arachidonic acid. And but to get really adequate, healthy amounts of GLA, it's important. It's probably easier to do that by supplementing. And that plays a really important role. So that just helps, that adds on to the enhancement. It enhances the benefits of omega-3s, and it works very similar to omega-3.
So that's why my Nordic natural fish oil supplement has evening primrose in it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Got it.
Because you want a balance of these fats in the cell membrane. You don't want to be overly loaded with any one of them. You'll have to have, and the more you have of one, the harder it is for others to get in there.
Mm.
Okay. And so you really want to have a balance. So, whether that be that you cycle on and off, you take your fish oil And then say for a month, you take flax oil, and then you take some evening primrose oil. And then you're always getting plenty of linoleic acid. That you're getting that from nuts, seeds, industrial seed oils, canola oil, vegetable oils, safflower oil, all those all your grains are loaded. That's all omega-6s. You're getting plenty of omega-6s. Um, so, and the other interesting thing, and we're going to get a little heady here, but omega-6 and omega-3, they share the enzymes that convert them. How alpha-linolenic acid can convert into EPA and then into DHA, and linoleic acid can convert into GLA. Well, it's the same enzymes that do those conversions. So if you have abundance of one, it's going to preferentially convert that one.
Okay.
So that's why, and the newest recommendations that are coming out, we used to say you got to reduce the amount of omega-6s you're consuming because they're driving up inflammation. And then you got to take omega-3s on top of that. The newest information that's coming out is saying, actually, you don't need to reduce your omega-6s. You just have to up your omega-3s. So, and that way you can get somewhat more of a balance there between them.
That actually kind of leads me to this very broad question that I have, but I think it's probably one that most people have right now at this point in the conversation is, how do I know how much to take? How do I know what, and I think this might even be easier with our pets, because I feel like, especially if we are feeding a pet food from a small manufacturer who prides themselves on transparency, there's one in particular, probably a handful of them, who I know I could call them up and find out in each recipe they have what's the omega-3 to omega-6 ratio. But for like us as humans, we're not eating out of a bag like that, right?
Right. We don't eat the same thing every day. We don't eat
Yeah.
a standardized diet, right? And that's the biggest difference between human nutrition and animal nutrition is you standardize the diets of animals so they can get the same thing every day. Whereas we're
Yeah.
like all over the place, So, but
Yeah.
how do you know how much to take is a great question. So I would say from a practitioner standpoint, I think the most scientifically, accurate way to go about this, if we were to go down that path, that is, I would run an omega index test. There's a great company out there called Omega Quant, and started by Dr. Bill Harris, who's one of the world's foremost researchers of omega-3s. And it's a little finger prick blood spot test. You just prick your finger just like a glucose test, and you take a drop of blood, you put it on this paper, it dries, put it in the mail, send it off to them, and then they analyze it, and you get what's called your omega index number. And so that can show you where you are on a range from 0 to 11, 12%. I think 12% is as high as it goes. And we want to be, as humans, we want to be in the 8% or higher range. And unfortunately, most humans are in the 4% range. At least most Americans are in the 4% range, which is really low. So based on that, then you can say, oh, you know what? 2 grams of EPA and DHA a day is going to start to move that needle and increase your omega index. You can figure out how much you need of omega-3s based on that. Okay. So that's like the most scientific way, really, that you could go about it. I think if you're just curious, like, I don't take fish oil, I really don't eat cold water fish. And if and just as a side note here, if you think you're getting all the EPA and DHA you need from your fish and chips, that fried fish isn't doing it for you. So it just isn't doing it. And also, it has to be cold water fish. The colder the water, the higher the amounts of EPA and DHA. Okay. So warm water fish aren't really significant sources of EPA and DHA. Now, if you're not a fish person, if you don't like eating seafood, taking an omega-3, you're not alone. Taking an omega-3 supplement is the best way to go about it. And what I would say is bare minimum, 500 milligrams of combined EPA and DHA a day. That's the bare minimum.
Mm.
But really, from my perspective, from what I have seen, anywhere from 1,000 milligrams or 1 gram to 2 grams, 2,000 milligrams a day of EPA and DHA combined. So meaning that not just, and this is really important, Jessica, because a lot of people don't realize this. A lot of people say, well, I take a fish oil supplement. Omega-3s are in that. And they'll say, 1,000 milligrams. Well, there might be 1,000 milligrams of fish oil in that. But what you really want to look at is the amount of EPA and DHA that's in that serving size. Because you can get 1,000 milligrams of fish oil, but you can have really low levels of EPA and DHA. So what I'm saying is you don't just want 1,000 milligrams of fish oil. You want 1,000 milligrams of combined EPA and DHA, whether that be, 700 milligrams of EPA and 300 milligrams of DHA or whatever ratio thereof. You want the amount of EPA and the amount of DHA to add up to 1 to 2 grams a day.
So for our pets, we want to be looking for the same things, the EPA and DHA.
You want to look for the EPA and DHA.
And
now pets have the numbers I just gave are for humans.
Right. Yes.
Our pets really don't need that much.
So, okay, I turn back to pets. When you say 1 to 2,000 milligrams, is that for when I look at like dosing on a package, whatever supplement I'm looking at, my understanding, and I could be wrong about this, but my understanding is that is generally recommended for an average 100-pound human. Now, the average male human today may be a lot more than 100 pounds. So is it still the same? What do you think about that?
Right. So it's not so much weight based for people as it is for pets. Pets, it's very weight based. If you look at dosing charts for pets, it's always looking at the weight of the pet and then coming up with the amount based on that weight. Which I don't have that chart memorized. So if you're going to ask me how much a pet has, how much a 10-pound cat needs, I'm not going to be able to tell you that.
I could probably pull that up, but yeah, that's okay. Okay. So you've talked a lot about cold water fish. Colder the water, the better. That doesn't necessarily mean, my understanding, that land animal, like if we're eating land animals, there's still maybe some omega-3s, certainly omega-6. We're just not getting the amounts that are optimal. Is that how?
Well, every little bit counts. And there's a difference. And this is an important topic of discussion because, as a nutritionist, and I've been doing this for 30 years, there's so much spin out there. There's a lot of spin out there. And when you hear people say, red meat's bad for you because, it increases inflammation and yada, yada, yada. But they're not analyzing the quality of the meat. There's nothing that's been done to look at the difference between grass-fed, grass-finished beef, which is going to have higher levels of omega-3s than omega-6s, versus a cow that's 100% grain-fed, of corn and soybeans, which is going to be higher in omega-6s. So, there's a difference there. So once again, sourcing and quality play a real difference there. So you can get omega-3s from land animals like cows, bison, elk. Those can provide good sources of omega-3s. Not to the degree of, cod or mackerel or, a serving of sardines or something like that. But certainly they will. And every little bit counts because the thing is if you could, the more varied your diet is, the easier it is to meet your nutrient needs. And so, and the other thing that's really important for people to understand is that when you consume omega-3s and you take in EPA and DHA and they go into the cell membranes, like I talked about earlier, they get used on a daily basis. So they have to be replenished on a daily basis. And so I have a 3C rule that I always tell people about, and that is consistency of consumption is critical. You have to consume them on a daily basis. And and if you wanted to do it by food, having a wide, varied diet is really the easiest way. And minimizing anything that can block the conversion of alpha-linolenic acid into EPA and DHA, because there are various things that can block that conversion. Things like chronic stress that every one of us is practically dealing with, high blood sugar, insulin resistance, alcohol consumption, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. What are some other blocking factors? Subclinical nutrient deficiencies of zinc and B3 and B6. And so there are various things that can inhibit that conversion. If you wanted to enhance the conversion of alpha-linolenic acid into EPA and DHA, then stress management techniques, making sure you're taking a multivitamin to get those B vitamins, to get those minerals that you might have. Subclinical nutrient deficiency is it's a low enough deficiency that it can impact the physiology in a negative way, but not so much of a deficiency to have a deficiency syndrome. So like vitamin C deficiency, a full vitamin C deficiency would lead to scurvy. But a subclinical deficiency is enough to keep you from getting scurvy, but not enough to like really provide all the wide varying benefits of vitamin C, say as an antioxidant and immune supporter. Stress management, take a multivitamin, avoid NSAIDs, use other options like curcumin, boswellia, omega-3s, those types of things. And make sure that the blood sugar is stable and not high. Those are all things that you can do to enhance the conversion of alpha-linolenic acid into EPA and DHA.
Stress management.
I know.
Actually,
Should be mandatory.
Goodness gracious. I will say you triggered me with multivitamin. I'm triggered by multivitamins. I just find that so many of them are crap.
Oh, that's true. I mean, if you're, I won't say any names, but yeah, there are quite a few bad ones out there with,
Yeah. I have, I used to take a multivitamin and then I just didn't notice any difference. And I've switched to taking various desiccated beef organ supplements.
Mm-hmm.
And I've definitely noticed a difference because I don't eat organs. Unlike my pets that eat a lot of organs, I don't have the palate for it. I take the desiccated beef organs from a reputable source, grass fed from New Zealand, all the things.
Yep.
But yeah, multivitamins trigger me for sure.
I understand that, and if I could put your mind at ease, there's a lot of research that shows that they provide tremendous benefit too. And as long as you get a reputable company and take it with a meal, that's going to be the two most important things you can do. Get it from a reputable company, take it with a meal. And make sure that the forms of the vitamins and minerals are bioavailable forms, whether they be chelated minerals and activated Bs. So like methylfolate, methylcobalamin, that type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been trying to learn more about that. I don't know if you do or don't appreciate my source, but I like Gary Brecka quite a bit.
Okay.
Trying to learn a little bit from him on all of that. I haven't tested myself yet for the MHTFR, but that's a
Uh-huh.
whole other.
Yeah. That's a I mean, I know that I have one of the SNPs for that. So
Mm.
it's something that I personally pay attention to. Runs in the family, that's genetics. So,
Yeah.
it's interesting. We're entering a time of precision medicine that allows it to become highly personalized, and
Hmm.
which is exciting, and it's a new frontier. And nutritional genomics is a field that will revolutionize personal wellness. 100.
I love that optimism.
I see it. I see it. So,
Yeah. No,
yeah,
it is. Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's all about supply and demand, and the more people that demand it, that's where things will head. So, with that, I appreciate all of the wisdom that you have shared with us today to get more people, whether it's for themselves or their pets, or hopefully both, to start thinking a little bit more about what we put on the plate, or even the pills that we throw down our throats, whatever it may be. It can be really simple, but also we need to understand the why before we can make it simple, I think.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think understanding the why is critical because that provides the motivation, and the dedication that's necessary to do something consistently. And wellness takes that, whether it's for our pets or for ourselves. It takes a driving why that leads to dedicated, consistent effort.
I could not have said it better. So we'll end there. Thank you again for everything. Guys, if you have any comments, questions, please let me know and I would be happy to pass them along. Judah, where can people, do you just want to send them to Nordic Naturals? How do
Yeah,
you?
if they're interested in using a high quality omega-3 fish oil supplement, you can go to nordicnaturals.com. You can find product there. You can go to your local health food store. You can go to typically your local pet store as well. So, or if you'd like to shop online, it's online there also.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I use the products, which is why I reached out to you to begin with. And I appreciate all of the knowledge that you are willing to give out to people and for you to come on the podcast. So, um, you guys have a fabulous rest of your week. Thank you for hanging out with us for a little while, and give some extra love to your pets from both me and Judah this week. Bye,
Thank you
guys.
so much.